Damari nodded, praying to save her friend Mabaro. Then the man shouted, "I killed your mother, cursed mermaid. You are the daughter of Segun, the traitor who betrayed his own village." Hearing what the old man said, Damari stopped and looked at him. "What are you saying, old man?" she asked in a calm, angry and trembling voice. The man responded, "I said I stabbed your mother with the same machete I will use to finish you off." Damari let out a scream so loud and powerful that Segun, who had been searching for her all over the village, heard it. The mermen from the river heard it too. "She is one of ours," the two-tailed king murmured. Suddenly water began to rise from the ground, surrounding Damari and Mabaro, forming a giant tornado. As the roaring water circled them, the great fish emerged, opening its massive jaws. Damari took Mabaro and carried her inside the fish, while the tornado unleashed its fury on the village of Gogoro, destroying everything in its path. The great fish swam away, and as it did, Damari healed Mabaro inside the fish's belly. When the great fish returned to the kingdom of the mermen, all the mermen and mermaids gathered in front of it. The fish opened its mouth, and Damari swam out. They all looked at her in awe. "She is of royal blood," they whispered among themselves. The two-tailed merman approached her again. "You are royalty. You are always welcome among us, but I sense danger running through your veins," he said. Damari then told him about Mabaro's condition, and he sent mermaids to heal her wounds. They performed rituals to discover who Damari's parents were, and found out she was the daughter of the exiled queen who had been banished from the kingdom during the war. Damari shared her life story, growing up on land, and everything became clear. She had the blood of both the earth and the sea flowing in her. The two-tailed merman ordered Damari to call her father and tell him that she was safe, but Damari wasn't sure how to do it. "I don't know how it works," she said. All the mermen around her smiled. "You called the entire kingdom a few minutes ago. This ability is rare," they told her. "Even for queens, and now you can't call your father," said the two-tailed merman, smiling. "Whenever you hum a melody from your heart, the family member or person you are thinking about will hear it and come to you. That's how it works, and that's how you've always done it," he explained. A mermaid approached Damari and the two-tailed merman while they were speaking. "My king, the injured lady in the great fish needs to be treated on the surface. Our medicine is keeping her stable, but she cannot eat," the mermaid said. The two-tailed merman nodded towards Damari, and she returned to the great fish to check on Mabaro. Still in shock, Mabaro exclaimed, "Oh my God, you're a mermaid, a golden one," touching Damari's tail. Damari smiled at her. "I'll take you home now, and I need to see my father too," she said. Damari sang, and the great fish closed its mouth, carrying them to the surface. Meanwhile, Segun had returned to his old village and saw that it had been completely destroyed. Some armed men who were still there saw him and began to chase him. "Look at what your useless daughter has caused. You and your daughter will both die," they shouted as Segun ran, now sure that his daughter was still alive. Suddenly, he heard a familiar song, which drew him toward the river in his new village. There, he met his daughter, Damari, Mabaro, and the mighty fish. Segun ran to Damari and hugged her tightly. Damari explained everything that he had kept hidden from her and introduced her friend Mabaro and the great fish. Damari asked her father, Segun, to take Mabaro to a clinic for help, reassuring him that she would return soon. Segun carried Mabaro and took a few steps when suddenly a crowd of angry men appeared, chasing Damari and the great fish back into the river. Unbeknownst to Damari, her father and Mabaro had already been captured. The armed men from Gogoro had made an agreement with the new village after seeing what Damari had done to theirs. They wanted Damari and her father Segun dead. They imprisoned Segun, and after a few days of Mabaro's recovery, they took her to the shore. They ordered her to call the fish and send a message to Damari and the mermen, telling them they had Damari's father and that she must come out with all the mermen to save him. Mabaro told them she didn't know how to call the great fish, but the men beat her mercilessly until she screamed in pain. The great fish stirred in the mermen's kingdom and rushed violently to the surface, surprising everyone, including Damarie, as no human should be able to connect with the great fish. As the men continued to beat Mabaro, the great fish leaped out of the water, biting and driving the men away before swallowing Mabaro and swimming back to the kingdom of the mermen. When the mermen arrived, Damarie knew Mabaro was inside the great fish, and she swam to meet her. Mabaro, severely beaten, explained to Damarie what had happened and warned her of the imminent war. Damarie was furious and screamed, holding her head, which also drew the other mermen closer to the fish. She swam out and informed them that the men on land had captured her father and were demanding war. Some of the mermen shouted their agreement to go to war, but the two-tailed merman reminded them of the stories about Damarie's mother, the Queen of Chaos, and war, and advised Damarie to go alone peacefully the next day to avoid conflict. Damarie agreed, and when the next day arrived, she prepared herself. With Mabaro inside the great fish, they swam to the surface. Upon their arrival, they were greeted by the angry men of the village, thousands in number. The man who had killed her mother was holding Segan in his hands, glaring at her menacingly. He spoke. "We told you to bring all the people of the sea, but you came alone. You disobeyed, bringing a weak child and a stupid fish." Damarie swam forward, her tail transforming into legs as she reached the shore. "I come in peace, sir. I'm sorry for destroying your village. I am the one who is guilty, and I am the one who must be punished," Damarie said. "Punished? You said punished?" he mocked. "Then punished you will be, little fish. But since you said punished, I'll first punish you by slitting your father's throat," he said, slicing Segan's throat. Segan fell to the ground, bleeding out, his eyes locked on Damarie. Damarie watched in horror as her father choked on the ground. Her golden eyes began to glow a bright yellow, and she let out a scream that echoed throughout the river. The great fish roared with her, and her cry summoned all the mermen from the river. War erupted, and Damarie charged at the man who had killed her father. She used a wall of water to immobilize him and stepped forward, firmly gripping his throat. She said, "I should punish you by killing your wife and children, but I suppose I've already done that. Perhaps I'll give you a more painful death strangling. You would be merciful." Damarie dragged him towards the great fish, which eagerly opened its mouth and bit off his lower half. Mabaro, hiding behind the fish, jumped in fear as a group of men attacked. The great fish fought valiantly, though it was severely wounded by arrows and spears. Damarie fought with ferocity, slaughtering men as her rage grew with every glance at her father's lifeless body. The men of the village continued to fire arrows and recruit more troops, but Damarie, fueled by anger, refused to retreat. All she wanted was to see them dead. The men from the village overwhelmed the great fish, and one of them captured Mabaro by its side. "Little traitor," he mocked, driving a spear into her heart, which also pierced the great fish. Both screamed loudly, the sound reaching an enraged Damarie as she fought. She turned around and saw the last ties to her homeland breaking. The great fish, though already severely injured, tried to fight but couldn't manage it. Damarie rushed to Mabaro, cradling her as she took her last breath. Tears filled Damarie's eyes. In one day she had lost her entire family. The two-tailed merman, seeing that they could not win, ordered his people to retreat, but this only fueled Damarie's anger further. She stood up, raised her hands, and a powerful wave of water rose from the river. Following her movements as she lowered her hands, the wave crashed down, engulfing her and all the men on the shore, killing every one of them. From that day on, Damarie was never seen again. The river's colour changed into two distinct shades that never mixed, each flowing in its own direction. Some say it's the blood of the fallen villagers and merfolk. while others believe it's the spirit of Damari, the spirit of both land and water still within the river. I hope you enjoyed our story. Please support us by pressing the save button, liking, commenting, and subscribing for more videos like this one. Also, if you'd like to join our membership, you'll get access to new episodes before they are released, and my social contacts. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.